we got the group back together. So this is, I'll probably divide this into two parts, but we got part two here with really just talking about some pen and ink illustrators and artists that we all enjoy. So everybody brought something to the table just to kind of talk through, and then obviously just continue the discussion. So same rotation. Brad, you're up first, and you picked Greg Irons.
Oh, yeah, but
and just grab these two pieces. There's a couple more on the next slide that actually they're courtesy of your book, Daniel. You sent me over those pictures over text. I used a couple of them for this.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. What made you pick Greg Irons?
Well,
he's a badass.
Well, that's the damn truth. I started off the sins of my youth was I was looking at underground comic books, which were for adults 18 and over, and I was looking at them at 12 and 13 years old because there was a head shop in my town and I had a crush on the hippie girl that was helping run it, and she would let us come in 9, 10, 12 years old, let us come in and look through the book. Wouldn't sell them to us, that's illegal, but let us look through Zaps and Slow Death and Skull and all the stuff I gravitated toward Greg Irons. The three guys I gravitated towards were S. Clay Wilson, Greg Irons, and Dave Sheridan. But really, Greg Irons, he did the horror stuff, and that's of course where I was always into really dark fantasy and horror. And unbeknownst to me, a lot of his stuff is done with is done in brush as well. And I didn't know how comics were drawn at that time. I took a magic marker, and just did whatever I could do. And a lot of stuff I would do was in pencil, and I just bear down really hard for the black areas. And I had no idea. And I looked at a lot of his stuff. I was never somebody who could imitate what somebody else did. I would always look at it, and somehow my mind would break it all up into, here's how you're going to do that, even though that was the inspiration. And so Steve Bissett has told me that Greg Irons is also is a huge inspiration to him as well. And Steve Bissett and I have known each other for years. He drew Swamp Thing.
That's awesome. Man.
Taboo magazine, and it goes on and on. And so we've had some discussions on Greg Irons, but Bissett was even supposed to ink. There's one whole horror strip, 8 to 10 pages, that's just in pencil by Greg Irons that has never been inked. And and I've been dying to see it, and Bissett won't show me the copies. He won't do it. He just won't. But he told me that he was scheduled to ink it, and he was going to ink copies of the pages so the pencils could just remain pure. And he said that his dreams bothered him about it so much that he reneged and said not that he wouldn't do the project, and it still stands as undone. And so whoever's in charge of that, if you're listening, I would love to ink.
Unbelievable.
Because if you're making copies of the pages, and say I screw up, just give me another copy, and that way we don't, the pencils just remain in pure state. But I think you can take a good look if you're familiar with what I do at all. I honestly, anytime I look at Greg Irons, I'm always reminded of where I came from. This stuff and Frank Frazetta, Jeff Jones, and those guys that were doing this type of work back then. It just, all of that. It's almost like Philippe Drouillet, too. The ships and the water and weird atmosphere and the idea that it looks ancient and futuristic all at the same time. And that's how my mind was already picturing things at that young age. But I had no idea how to bring that internal to the external. How do you do it? How was it done? And there's that long, long journey you decide to get onto and stay on it to see, how it's done. And this guy is just the guy that I just came back to over and over and over again. Although when people used to ask me back then, who are your favorite artists? I would, like if I named my top 10, he was down towards 8, 9, or 10. And not for any reason, not for a conscious reason, but I kept looking back and realizing this guy was one of the big, the bedrock of where it came from. There's another guy too in the underground comics. His name was Errol McCarthy, one of the best inkers I've ever seen in my life. He had the creepiest black and white look, and he even worked in the above ground books like Cartoons and Cycle Tunes. Those Crazy Peterson publications that were all about hot rods. And
I used to pick up Cartoons. Yeah, it was a good magazine.
Oh yeah. Well, Errol McCarthy is just. I think he was the first black and white artist I've tried to imitate with a brush. because that's when I found out it was brush ink. And I thought, whoa, so that's why my stuff doesn't look like it. So I got a brush, and I'm probably the wrong one, can't even remember. And I tried to do it, and I opened up some cartoons, and I thought, all right, I'm going to try to figure this out from the best. So Errol McCarthy. So I tried and tried and tried, and could come close but couldn't get it. So then I started thinking about the other things, and so I started going back going back to Greg Irons and looking at what he did and thinking, gosh, I had these ideas as well. And this guy solidified the ideas and the feelings that I had, the internal impressions. He solidified them in these underground, but we were always told when we were kids that the undergrounds were illegal. Well, it's illegal to sell them to a minor, but they're not illegal. It's not illegal to make them, But we were told as kids those books are illegal. And I thought, whoa, I'm even more, I'm even more attracted to it now. Then when Heavy Metal Magazine came along, and I saw Philippe Drouillet and all the European guys, the Filipino guys, Mobius, and all the Filipino guys like Alex Nino and Rudy Nebres, they were all inking like this, just like what you see right there. And then I had seen this stuff at 9 and 10 years old. Then I am in high school looking at all that other stuff. And it's like, wow, there's a big, big connection. I wonder what the connection is. And the connection is that I think that everybody just has, and I myself included, or you guys included, we all have a shared existence, a shared reality in a certain sense, in that we've all had impressions, and we think, boy, I recognize this impression in this guy's work, and then I see it over here, and then I see it over here. Okay, how do I make that happen for someone to see it in my work? And anyway, we're kind of getting away from the point, but the idea is that's what I found in Greg Irons' work, whether he was doing the comedy stuff like Darnold Duck or the serious stuff like this. One of his characters that used to just split my sides was Gregor the purple-assed baboon.
Yeah.
An anthropomorphic baboon living life. He looks like a human other than the fact that his face, and he's a baboon. He's got the smart aleck cap, and he's got just an old...
Great.
Yeah, old beat up.
Yeah.
Now, there's one picture where he was contemplating suicide, but he couldn't drown himself because the water had been turned off in his apartment. He couldn't electrocute himself by sticking his tongue in a light bulb because the electricity had been turned off. So he goes outside, and he's standing on a street corner in the winter. There's one tree branch above him with one leaf coming off. This is by Greg Irons. And the caption said, "Hope springs eternal." Another time he gets in his Volkswagen and it doesn't work. So being underground cartoons, it's all exaggerated. So
and I think that some of that was based on his life, because if you look at old pictures of him, he's in a shitty Volkswagen. Like his car was like, so
he based it on his own, and just souped it up, and write down the funny things your friends say and all that stuff, and use them in your comments. Right. We've all done that. Well, the Gregor decides to fix his Volkswagen, so he takes a car tool. It's a tire iron. It's really huge at one end like this, and he's smashing the hell out. There's pieces flying everywhere, and the caption says, "Minute adjustments with precision instruments." I was just absolutely cracked. And of course, it's all as masterfully drawn as these examples right here. All of it. And
the line were impeccable.
Yeah, just the amount, the guts that are in it, But the idea that you get the idea, he's felt all this, and see that it was all communicated to me, and I thought, well, of course, I was a young kid that hadn't lived enough life, but was already having these feelings. I thought, how do I communicate? This guy is communicating what a piece of wood feels like. He's communicating what it would be like to walk in front of a specter made of bone. I mean, and we've all imagined that, and I thought, how do I connect? How do I make somebody else think that I've had these experiences somehow internally or externally, and how do I put that on a piece of paper? So this guy, major props to this guy for putting me as one of many artists like Frazetta and other people that put me on this direction. And just prior to my discovering Heavy Metal Magazine, I'd never seen a European artist in my life that I knew of until I saw Heavy Metal, and then I started searching out every French and Italian artist I could, and they were blowing me away as well.
If you go to the next slide, Lee, I'm not familiar with Greg Irons. Maybe my first time seeing his work. Maybe I've seen his work in passing. But on the Ancient Mariner title page, just looking at it from, again, going kind of back to that graphic design idea, the framing in of the typography with the aquatic creatures. And then what really caught my eye was the bottom left-hand portion.
Yeah.
It's essentially like instead of a silhouette being black, it's white with an outline. You can see like remnants of a sword, some swords, and maybe some treasure pieces.
Uh-huh.
It's just all that information is just made with an outline. It's a silhouette essentially, but it's white instead of being black. And I just it's got like line strokes kind of going through it that's broken up with a little bit of
almost
texture.
reminds me of Muka, you know?
Right. Yeah.
He would do those lines as like a design element. Yeah.
It's just, to me, it's just like, wow, what an interesting design choice. But it's helping to frame in the focal point being that boat. It's helping to kind of frame that in, and also the swords are kind of like pointing your eye in that direction.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. To me, it's just like such an unusual but very, very effective choice. I like that. I like seeing this kind of stuff because, again, an artist I'm probably not really familiar with, but just seeing the artist make that choice, that conscious choice to do that, it's now I've learned something. You know, I wouldn't have thought to have done it that way. So now I can think about doing something like that.
Oh yeah.
Passing on that information without even talking to the artist, just looking at his work. It's pretty wild. And also the treatment of like water, like, so I find that, like, how do you draw water with ink? That's really challenging. Just to see how he's tackled it.
Yeah.
All that negative space being utilized, that white space.
And the movement it's created, the way he's just achieved movement with the choice of how he drew those lines.
Not just the
amazing,
but also the strokes, the white strokes that are coming toward you, kind of like a grid almost. Right beneath the foam is really an interesting choice as well, but it helps again point your eye right to the boat.
I love how there's multiple ways that he rendered water and across these three different pieces. There's three different takes on water. I mean, on the left, it's a super high, kind of high contrast, but there's a gradient there to where it kind of reverses out to where the horizon is all lit up, and like the way that it communicates the light, so like he does it so economically, where there's just these areas of like heavy, bold, but that's water. It looks like water, and then you go the complete opposite on the right side. It's kind of like, I want to say it's Wally Wood had a bunch of like pirate comics for EC, or there's some of those older kind of EC kind of pirate comics and stuff where it's like, that really kinetic line work, where it's showing that motion, and it's a completely different, aside from that kind of negative space foam in there, which I think is a really rad touch, the way it's not outlined, it's just that negative space there, but it totally communicates like water behaving, differently in two completely different ways, two different, sets of values and mark making. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You got to be good
mastery.
to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Greg became a master tattooist right before he died.
Yeah.
Studying in the Asian countries. And he died. He was killed in a traffic accident in the Asian countries. He stepped out in front of a bus.
Oh.
At 30, what was he?
35.
35.
35, 36,
Awesome.
Unbelievable. Gosh, what a loss. Well, for anybody, but wow.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Anybody else got anything on Greg Irons? We'll go to the next one.
It's a great choice.
Yeah, excellent choice.
All right. You're up, Daniel. You gave me a good story about this one the other day.
Did you got the Mark Schultz one, right? Also?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
I have that one later down.
Oh, okay. This is Rick Magyar, and I can't say that his work specifically is an influence on me, but this particular piece is, and I met him. I picked both of mine because both of my choices because I met the artist in person and I had discussions with him. Again, I didn't follow directions, story of my life on this one, but Lee was kind enough to let me participate anyway.
Dude, I wanted you to. No.
But Rick Magyar, I have this actual piece with me. It's an original I bought from Rick at a convention. His first piece of art I ever bought, original. And this was used as a ad for what's Todd McFarlane, his toy company or whatever. He did an Aussie figure or something, and this was going to be the ad for it. Anyway, this piece was done with brush entirely, and owning it throughout the years and looking at it. So this is 99, so we're coming up on almost 25 years. And every time I pull it out to look at it, it just recharges me. I have never seen brushwork this just tight and just the composition, the choice of where the blacks are. He penciled and inked this. He's primarily an inker. He inked a lot of stuff for DC throughout the 90s. He may have started in the late 80s, I'm not sure. But again, I can't say directly he's an influence overall with this, but this piece in particular just kicked my ass. I mean, I learned from it all the time. So it just was really inspiring me. And another reason why I tried to pursue inking with a brush, because of what you can achieve. I mean, look at the hair, the negative space in the hair.
This is such good. It's just the feathers in the hair, like the way the range of values that you can get with a brush like this is like, this is right. This is fucking awesome. I haven't seen this before. Thanks, man. Because this is like the subtlety. I mean,
look at the line work,
subtlety of the shading that he's
up at the top.
Yeah.
I mean, all this. I have the original right here. If you look in these spots, up in here, it's just.
Yeah, it's almost gray.
I mean, complete. Just the line work in that just blows me away every time I look at it. I think the only thing, like if you look at the chainmail, I think what he did was he may have like outlined that in pen, but everything else is brush. The hairs in that bat, just the gloves, the line work in the gloves.
It looks like the stray hairs those are negative space, right? He didn't come back in with
it's negative space.
Which is like, get the fuck out of here. Like God, like you can kind of tell because where they intersect, you can kind of see that it looks like it's
it's not white ink.
Man. God,
it's not white ink. He did that with leaving the spaces with the brush.
Dude. It actually it reminds me of Brian Bolland a little bit.
It is that quality.
Invisibles and
If you look at the line work in the lips, I mean, it's just unreal what he was able to achieve. Just that gray tone right there in the lips. I mean, I don't know. It just blows me away. It's really showed me, again, this is brushwork, and you look at it, it almost has the tightness of like a, engraving or even clayboard work. It's just superior. I mean,
and just the texture, so many different kinds of textures happening in that piece.
Right. The leather, he's doing dry brush in the sleeve. He's doing dry brush to give it that kind of worn, leathery look.
And like the glove is like a subtly different leather texture than the jacket sleeve. It's like, dude, that's just the way that I'm fucking blown away by that one. Wow.
That's unreal.
Definitely shows you the value of having an original too. I mean, you're using it as a study tool.
My God, dude! And if you look at the top corner with the bats, this is another thing I love. the bats in the background are very graphic, very harsh, bold shapes. But then he chose to, in the foreground, the bat coming at you.
Furry.
It's a little more realistic, the body and the face, but then the wings in the foreground still kind of have that graphic quality, but obviously more line work showing the bones and the wings, and I don't know. It's just
also,
the only thing. It's just
the choice of two different. If you look at that bat on the top right, the one that's closest to us in the foreground, so the furthest away part of the wing on his upper wing has really tight like a stroke, like a really narrow, thin stroke. But then if you look closer into the wing where it gets closer to the body, it's like this thick, really thick, almost like unfinished, like if you took a Sharpie marker and just,
it does look like that.
Like two different textures on the wing. Like, I'm like, I would never have thought to have done that. Like, to me, that just doesn't make sense to do it that way. But when I look at it in this finished piece, and see somebody approach it that way, it does make sense. It's really an interesting choice, but it looks great.
Again, though, the feather work, the feather, the wings on Ozzy, all the feather work, the line work in that to achieve the shape of the feathers, just
that's crazy.
It's just insane to me how that. I mean, it's so good.
That's cool.
Yeah. What? I know it's like fucking over 20 years ago. What was his demeanor like when you met him and stuff?
Super friendly.
Yeah.
Very accommodating and just open. And again, I'd met Mark Schultz the year before, and then again that solidified the whole thing with brushwork and drawing with a brush. And again, I asked him about it, and he kind of just reiterated what Mark Schultz had told me, and he kind of gave me some guidance and looked at my work and gave me some helpful hints and stuff, and just a super nice guy, and again, that's like first original piece that I've ever purchased from another artist, and I've hung on to it ever since. One time I almost sold it because I was just in a really tight spot, and I'm glad that I didn't, because again, I learned from it every time I look at it. So it's been cool to share it with you guys. So
yeah, that's awesome.
It's cool. Great pick. Thank you.
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with his work. I'm not too well versed in. I guess his background's comics. Is that correct?
It is, and again, I wasn't familiar with his stuff, and I can't really say he's an influence overall. But again, this piece, just the fact that he penciled it, inked it, it's just complete command over those tools, and it's a perfect example of what can be achieved with just one tool.
Now, can I ask you the frame? The frame is that an illustrated, or is that a rectangle that's illustrated, or is that like some kind of Zipatone type?
No, it was drawn on.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
No.
All right, Mark, you are up for your first pick.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not necessarily going for I think the last panel we did, Lee, I talked about some of the artists from my youth that influenced me.
Yeah.
I just picked a couple artists who I just happened upon, mainly just from getting a record or a cassette or a demo or something like that. I was like, oh wow, this art's really cool, and I always look to see who the artist is, and then I might I'll check social media too to see more of their work, and so the artists I picked are more recent, so to speak, artists. Yeah. And they're still very active, but Pat Zoller goes by Karmazid. I believe he's German based.
I love this guy's stuff.
Yeah, that's great.
You guys probably see. I mean, his stuff's pretty broadly published at this point. He got started, I think, more focused in terms of like producing artwork almost about a decade ago, I'd say, when he was I think he had just turned 30 and decided that he really wanted to turn his attention back to drawing, and so he really decided to pursue it. And I think his first gig, from what I understand, was working for a band Urfaust, black metal band. I think they're German. I don't have anything by them, but Karmazit's done a lot of work for that band in terms of like record covers and merchandise illustrations. But he also recently, and I think in the past year or two, did a Magic the Gathering card, maybe one or two, I can't remember, which is really cool to see him partake in that. Yeah. He's done. He doesn't just do ink; he does some painting work too. Yep. He's done. His paintings are very elaborate as well. But
that Lamp of Murmur painting this year.
Yeah, I was going to say Lamp of Murmur, Davia. I think the first time I noticed Karmazit's work was with a band called Dragcar. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you say that? Dragcar?
Yeah. So, I think it was a demo or an album or something he had worked on for them. It was my first time seeing his work. I've picked up a couple other releases, like Impure. He did a cover for. I think they're a Texan band. Stormkeep. Even actually a band that just put a new album out. I think it's actually coming out in about a week that I would like a lot. They're from, I think they're Slovenian, called Malokarpatan.
Malokarpatan, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but I'm a huge Masters Hammer fan from Czech Republic or Czechia. So they kind of sound like Masters Hammer, and so they are hugely appealing to me. But he's done work for them too, the Malokarpatan.
I got some other ones too, just so you guys can see.
Yeah, so I think these are more recent pieces. I think the one that was on the right was one of his.
It's kind of, you see his evolution of his style too. Yeah. I'm more familiar with his more recent stuff.
This guy's the best.
Yeah, it's really awesome. It's like there's like an Aubrey Beardsley quality to it, you know. But it's like, but the detail that he renders is so gnarly. Like it combines that like graphic sensibility with his like all these. Man, that one on the right is so cool because it's got that like that texture, like the mozzarella pole. It's got got like I love his artwork so much, man. Yeah, big fan.
It's very fluid looking, but he just I think what appeals to me most about both the artists I picked today, but Karmazit, it's just this sense of mysticism and occultism without being overtly that way, but there's just a sense of mystery about it, like a mystique about it. And it's kind of like one of the reasons why I fell in love with some bands, you know, in the early 90s, like Masters Hammer, for example, or like Mystifier or a band, you know, some of the bands that, you know, back in those days, you didn't always see a picture of what they look like, but you get these sounds that were just so otherworldly. And I get that same feeling when I look at Patrick's work here. It's just there's just such a sense of it's something like an epiphany unfolding. I don't know how else to describe it. So I think that's, first of all, that's the main appeal, and in terms of like why I chose to look.
It's got an ancient quality to it, like a woodcut kind. Yeah.
Exactly. There's, like I said, there's something very mystical about the way he has just the subject matter and the way he inks. It's just otherworldly and almost like somewhat like medieval in a way, almost like something you might pull out of an old illuminated manuscript, or like some kind of forbidden tome. You know, that's and I love that the art. It's just black and white art, but it gives me that feeling, and I think art should emote. You know, it should force you to emote, and I feel like his work does that for me. In addition to the way it makes me feel when I look at it, just the execution and the use of texture, and not just, I mean, I'm talking like 10 textures in one piece makes just this sort of ornate quality that is sort of reminiscent of those Art Nouveau artists like Beardsley that Matt mentioned, or Harry Clark. This sort of intricacy about it, and it's just it's there's just something. It's just so engrossing. I can just stare at it. It's very captivating.
He thinks like a designer a lot too, like you.
Yeah, I suppose so. But I wanted to showcase some of Patrick's work because, and I don't know him personally. I've never met him or anything like that. Never exchanged any kind of communication with him. But and same with the other artists I picked. I don't know them. Our paths have never crossed. But
Pat's really friendly.
But yeah,
I chatted with him on Instagram briefly one time. Yeah, he seems like a nice guy.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't seen too much like press on him. I've seen him in like a few fanzines or like on the web here and there, but I wanted to point out his work because it's just so different. It's just so different from a lot of the stuff I see that's black and white and for the metal scene.
Yeah.
And the execution is phenomenal. The use of texture is unreal. And the subject matter is just so bizarre and like mystical. So anyway, I just wanted to point out his work because I really appreciate what he's doing.
Great stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I think he's on the level of Ian Miller. If everybody,
Ian Miller.
I love Ian Miller.
Yeah.
That's a great
Might see him later.
We're gonna get to you, Miller.
Yeah. Yeah, such a signature style. Anybody else got anything on Karmazid?
Great shit.
Karmazid, if you're watching, love to have you on the show. And I'll probably share this clip with you just because I think it might make your day. So you're a good dude.
Great stuff.
All right, my turn. So this is a guy who's kind of mysterious as well. He goes by Dirty Iron. He's got a great Instagram page. He's a Chinese artist. I actually got the name wrong there. His name actually is Yang Juan. I could be mispronouncing that, but there's really no information about this guy out there at all. I think he's a concept artist as a day job. But what I really love about his approach is I believe these are done with, ink, but then also Copic markers for having that kind of like grayscale, and it feels kind of more like a painting, but done kind of like ink, because you could do this kind of thing with like ink washes, but with Copic markers, you have all those different levels of the values. So it really allows you for that kind of control. And it's something that I like to incorporate with like some of my pen and ink stuff just to get some like softness in addition to just, stippling and hatching and stuff. But I think he draws a little bit from, the Mobius kind of catalog and adds in his own unique stake. Yeah. Excellent uses of perspective, atmosphere, scale. I find his stuff really, really inspiring. And I'm working on a piece right now where I think I'm going to use some Copics kind of like this. It'll end up looking more like my stuff, but I'll take a little bit of that tool.
I like just a sense of enormity.
Yeah.
Work.
Yeah.
It's just, the use of scale is just
when it's done in a sketchbook like this big too.
That's just funny, crazy. I see the pen on the side of the paper.
Yeah.
I mean, to have such a visual impact in such a small area is pretty damn impressive. And also, what a weird choice. Look at the one on the right. The spinal columns that are running up. The ones in the foreground, how they just have this. They're just black. They just go black.
Or that lighting, the way it's like hitting, Yeah.
It's almost abstract looking, yeah.
But that's to me, that's a brave choice if you're an artist, just to do that, because I feel like, well, now you've deleted all that information, but now their brain, whoever the viewer is forced to now fill in that gap there. And I mean, it looks awesome, and it is a smart choice, but it's a daring choice too.
It's kind of Mignola-esque to me a little bit, because he'll make similar choices like that to obscure stuff in total shadow,
Right, that's a good point. Yep, good reference point.
Does anybody else follow him?
Never seen him.
I've never heard of him.
It's all new to me.
Dirty Iron.
Dirty Iron, yeah. I think Instagram recommended, and I've started following him, and I'm literally taking screenshots every time he posts because I just love it.
Sometimes the algorithm gives you a home run. Yeah.
It does, man. Like this one on the left, I especially. Well, we were talking a bit about negative space and like drawing water and inking it. I mean, he really killed on the one on the right there, and that ominous drippy square thing.
Yeah.
And the one on the left, man, I think that's just excellent uses of lighting as well. There, just so
very,
cool,
very dramatic, high contrast, very dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
Great compositions too. Great concepts.
Matt, you picked Jack Davis as your first.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure everyone's familiar with Jack Davis.
Killer
I know
choice,
we are,
man.
but I think a lot of people are. Thanks, but yeah, I mean, like when it comes to, kind of when I started using a brush, 10 years ago maybe, like this is the kind of stuff that really, like what I love about Jack Davis is he like illustrates, figuratively speaking, like the range that you can really get with a brush of texture and of line, quality. Because he really, I mean, he obviously did so much shit for Mad Magazine and like TV Guide and like, advertising stuff. He did all these caricatures and he's really well known, for he did tons of kind of caricatures and really cartoony stuff. And like, obviously like he can do that and pull it off and it's really great. But then, you got stuff like on the right where he's like really pulled in and it's like Crumb where like a lot of it's really silly. But then when he wants to really render some fucking values, he can really like he can pull some like intense, detail and like the way that like, both of these like incorporate both like really bold, you look at the legs on the guy in the guillotine, the kind of outline of his body is this like really graphically bold line work, or the guy who's getting sniped on, with the lighter on the right, like where the outlines of his body and the helmet flying are like so intense and graphically bold, and then it's contrasted with this really fine hatching texture, right next to it. It's just kind of smashed together, and he's like incorporating these he's like really not afraid to use the full breadth of inking technique, which it's pretty fucking rad. I mean, he's a big huge influence on my personal style when it comes to using a brush, just because of the variety of
a lot of those EC artists were really heavy on the brush work. You know, the solid blacks to the thin hatching lines you're talking about, especially in that face on the right.
Right. Yeah.
One thing it kind of reminds me. I would imagine I always picked these up when I was a teenager. Some of these comics, but Matt Carr, his style looks like it's very much.
Oh yeah.
Love that dude.
It's like this stuff on acid though, because his stuff is so insane looking.
But one thing I love about this too is just the mindfulness that is taking place in terms of understanding the graphic design, like the layout on the page, that I have to accommodate a title treatment and all the other bullshit information like the EC logo, terror, war, funny man. But look how he's utilized the rope of the guillotine to pop in the foreground right above that typography. Just little decisions like that make such an impact, in terms of like really adding drama to the piece. Because the illustrations are very dynamic, but none of the important information is covered by the typography. So I love, and I think we talked about this, Lee, too, in our last panel. I think one of the artists brought up some movie posters that had typography on it, and it's just the artist being mindful of the finished product and what that might look like. It's so you can see even like the faces in the crowd around the guillotine. Not a lot of them are really covered up, or if they are, you can still see their eyes.
You can right between the letters.
Yeah, that, and also like the crypt keeper and the old witch and the vault keeper. Their headshots, they're not blocking a lot of the information, it's just really well. Imagine having those constraints and then having to illustrate within those constraints to still get your point across. I just think that's an added level of complexity that the artist must consider, and Jack Davis has totally nailed it on these pieces.
Yeah, because that was his. I mean, that's his bread and butter was. This kind of stuff where there's, always some title treatment. There's always some other stuff. It's always there has to be ad copy. There has to be, there like, like he was a commercial illustrator through and through. So all the stuff that he was doing was always for a purpose. Always had, you know, kind of that consideration. It's a great point.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, I have where I have it over here. Really great recent present for my wife was this fucking huge thing.
Oh, shit.
DC book that, like, and I mean, if you want to, this has, you know, it's Wally Wood, and it's a whole bunch of different you know, artists doing, you know, speaking of the waves, the water, you know, this kind of stuff. Crandall.
Who's the publisher on that, Matt?
IDW.
Oh man, those are so sick. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really nice volume, and it's got all this really cool stuff in it, and you know, being able to see,
and
like,
that's close to how they work. That's like the size that they worked on.
And these are scans of the original artboard, so like you could see some of the lines. You could see sometimes places where there was whiteout here on this one. There's like whiteout where right below her hand, like where there's the gun smoke.
It's the next closest thing to having the original. That
and being able to, and so if you're kind of getting started out, like this is something I've you know, acquired recently. That was an awesome present. But like if you're starting out with a brush, you know, having this kind of, you know, exactly right. Go find it. And I mean, I know these books are like they're kind of on the, they're a little expensive, I think, but like I mean for you know, art books, but they're so worth it because having shit like I have another over here. I have like a Walt Simonson's Alien comic in a oversized like scans of the artboard format, similar thing, and just being able to see that kind of stuff. I mean, I think you know, one thing I do remember seeing, like you know, probably 10 years ago was the Portland Art Museum had a traveling exhibit of Crumb's Genesis, Book of Genesis.
Oh man, that thing is a masterpiece, dude.
And it's incredible, and I have it. It's, you know, it's amazing. I almost picked that just because it's so incredible. But like seeing, I think that was for me, like, it was, you know, more than 10 years ago. It was a while ago. You know, you guys have been career illustrators for longer than I have, and I've been doing it professionally for, you know, 10 or 15 years now. But like, kind of that was the early time for me to like see those kind of mistakes, you know, the whiteout, or not even necessarily mistakes, but just being able to see like a real person made this, like a real illustrator. This is, you know, you can see things being reproduced and they look, you know, really pristine, and you can't necessarily see where, you know, things were cut out and pasted over, or you know, or whited out, or just
straight pencil marks.
Straight pencil marks. Even just the which you can see here, you know, because this image is a scan of this cover on the left, the Wolfman, like where you could see he took the you know, the white ink and brushed it over for the wind effect, and like being able to see that in person. I mean, it's cool to see, you know, reproduced in a format where you can see those marks like in the book here, but it's another thing altogether to see it in person and like get a sense for the art as a living and breathing object, you know. And it really it closes the gap between you and the artist so much more to see the actual, you know, physical, you know, product of the art rather than just a reproduction, which we're so used to seeing. It's cool. So get this book if you can, and then like never stop making. You know,
where are you storing it though? Because it's too big for most bookshelves, man.
It leans up next to the speaker by my record player. You know, it's next to all my records on the shelf. Yeah, I
think it's nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. The one on the right, I just randomly picked. I just liked the. You know what's interesting is all these figures have that very similar foot shape that I'm very intrigued by. Like if you see like it's
exaggerated,
it's like chiseled, but and I like, you know, some of the
hands. His hands and feet are all very distinctive.
For sure.
Distinctive.
Great artist.
That's cool.
All right, Brad, second pick.
Yeah, as I was saying earlier, I really am into a lot of the European artists, and also when the Filipino guys that came over that we were exposed to in the Warren books, you know, which is Vampirella, eerie, creepy, and those things. But this guy, there's a phylum of artists that you can't say where they belong, or you can't say what they are. Like you know, we could say that Greg Irons was an underground guy and a tattooist, and so on and so on. You can't really quite say what this guy is because he was in the fine arts world, but yet he also illustrated for sexual magazines and other kind of, risque publications similar to heavy metal in the United States, because over in that country in those countries they had Metal Hurlant, Pilote, and other. There's numerous other magazines that had adult themed, far over the head of kids, a type of material. And this, I just can't quite determine where this stuff goes. And there's a whole list of guys I could have come from, that could have provided, like Jim Leon, this guy, Raymond Bertrand. There's another guy named Pumarol, and you go on, and you go, I don't know what category this stuff fits in. Because in America, of course, we have to categorize everything. And over there, they just simply let it be. So when you look at this, it's surreal, it's sexual, it's violent, it's underground, it's all these things. But most of this, he was a painter, but most of this is pencil and stipple ink just together. Yeah, and as 3D as it looks, when you see, I have a huge art book of it. I don't have it with me. And when you open it up and look at the pages up close, yeah, it's very obvious. You can see what he did. But his imagery, he did work from live models. So lucky guy, he had all these nubile women running around. Yeah. But just take a look at it. I mean, it's transgressive. It's, again, surreal, but surreal is a great term. However, it just gets used so loosely that sometimes it loses its power. What surreal means is another reality. That's what that means. And when we're looking at this does all take place in another reality. Like, for instance, the piece there on the left had a profound influence on me. An insect-like woman creature, no explanation, doing something that is either transgressively or mildly erotic to another female. You can't even tell. There's some kind of warrior character in the background on a floating encephalopod, and it's exactly what I do today. It is. It is exactly what I'm constantly doing these kind of things and saying, haven't you seen work like this before? And 99% of the people I meet have not, So that's, I don't know, that's whatever. But to me, this stuff fires up my brain probably more than just about anything. And you should see his color work. But like I said, the theme for this program was for the black and white. So I have 2 art books by him. And then one half, it's just half and half paintings and half black and white work like this. Odd thing about Raymond Bertrand, he disappeared for a long time. No one knew what happened to him. Although I have heard, you never know what's real, that he has resurfaced as an older man, and some of his works now are appearing for sale and all that. Whereas for
several, where were these featured, Brad? Like, where were these particular
French and European magazines?
Okay,
like Pilote. And Metal Hurlant, which is where heavy metal comes from.
So it'd be like vignettes for part of a story, or just one-page illustrations? Or?
Illustrations for erotic stories or science stories or horror stories. Sometimes they would just be a portfolio of 5 images in the middle of the book for your clarification. But this artist, and like I said, the other artist I was mentioning, a man named Jim Leon, just tears my head off. British artist who just has these psychosexual nightmare things all rendered to just the most beautiful perfection. And you're looking at it going, oh my gosh, that makes me feel so uncomfortable. And yet it's incredible. I have to look at it for the next 3 hours. I really like that dynamic. I really do. And I think that I respond a great deal to that.
Really cool.
Yeah. And it just, and some people might not find this erotic at all. And maybe it's not meant to be. He just simply goes for it, like the underground guys in the '60s. And they just go for it. They didn't have to. Didn't have to cater to a certain crowd or whatever. They invented their own audience, I think, or whoever the audience was, that would gravitate to this work. They did so anyway. And I didn't know about this work until I went to art school, and then I just could not get, and still to this day can't get enough of it. I grew up in a rural Illinois town, so I wasn't exposed to almost anything. And yet I was thinking, well, I've seen some of the coolest stuff, and not even close. And I'm still discovering, even at my age today, with all these years in the business, someone will come up and show me something that I've never seen before that dates all the way back to 1968. I think, how on earth have I missed out on this? So this guy has been around since the early 60s, all the way through the 80s. And then I said he pulled a disappearing act for a long time. But major one of a group of artists. When I say group, they're not together. They weren't working together. But there's a group of artists over in the European areas and in the Philippines too that just came from they came from what I feel like is an almost completely original area. They didn't worry about whether it was Captain America or whether it was Batman. You know, that's the problem we have in America. We want to get a hold of people like this and hire them to do Batman. You know, that's the worst thing you could do. Even though they might like the paycheck, they absolutely hate to have to draw Batman. You know, so. And this guy, like I said, and the other people I'm talking about, you know, would be in magazines that are the equivalent of heavy metal and things that we would have in America. Except there's just an entire world of artists and graphic technicians to learn about that we aren't exposed to here.
That's a really I like that you dug deep to share something that we're not really. I mean, I've never heard of this artist.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with this one.
I can see the definitely the influence with the texture, use of textures.
Yeah.
There's a lot. I mean, the subject matter alone is sort of like wow, and then you look closely and you see, wow, there's a lot of unusual things going on here with just texture alone that you can kind of gain from. They almost look like if you put a leaf under a microscope or something.
Yeah,
just a lot of veins.
Yeah.
Really unique looking.
His technical abilities are stunning. You know, like I said, you can take an illustration of an exploded picture of a brake drum. I use this often, and it could be technically like, wow, I've never seen such incredible line work drawn by hand. That is amazing, but it has no emotive power to it. It doesn't blow you away in any other way. It doesn't connect to your soul because it's a picture of a brake drum. So when someone can take that much technicality and then put it into something like this, and they put it in the right places, it's in the right doses, it's in the right areas. You know, that to me, that's where you're approaching or becoming a master. You know, and people throw that around too often. But to me, yeah, this is just masterful work because it captures the feeling, and that's more important than anything. It captures the idea that's what's in the head and the heart at the same time, and then it puts it down on a piece of paper, on an area, you know, flat area, and you read it in the illusion of 3 dimensions, and although it's a 2-dimensional drawing, and it has subject matter, it has a theme to it, it has themes to it that maybe you haven't allowed yourself to even think of before, whether that's good or bad, whether that's creative or destructive. There are a lot of people who can say, I think this is bad for people and all that, and you know, I listen to what people have to say, I hear what they have to say. It's and I say, well, if it's hurting you, don't look at it. If it's bothering you, then don't take part in it. You know, but let other people, you know, be able to see things like this. Because for me, this opened up an entire new world, psychically. Well, not psychically, but you know, and mentally and all of that.
That's really cool.
Super cool.
Yeah, really cool.
Nice. Talking a little bit about Mark Schultz.
Yeah.
This particular piece.
Yeah, this is another amazing example of brushwork. What really got me with this one was the transparency of the water, just with what he's achieving with just minimal line. The texture and the side of the cave or rock that I don't know, I guess that's like coral or something there. There's a lot of textures going on in that. And it's just this particular piece just blows me away. The figure, the expression on the face, the tentacles, complete mastery. He's taking kind of what Wally Wood and Frazetta did, and then just kind of putting his own stamp on it. But yeah,
and the way that her upper body is framed by the negative space, you know, behind her, by the black area behind her, that really like draws your attention, like really zooms you in to that focal point of the image. It's like compositionally, it's so strong. Yeah,
very.
But those drop shadows on that water, like hitting her. So
I was just looking at that. Yeah.
God.
And I've seen his I didn't see this particular original, but when I met him, he had his originals there. And if you look kind of where that octopus is, you kind of looks lighter. He'll let the ink, kind of when you put a brush line down and you might have a little more water in it than, usual, it'll be kind of gray out. He'll I don't know if he's purposely doing that. It looks like he is, because there'll be large areas where it's not really ink wash. It's just kind of a more watered down ink look. And it's just beautiful.
I think, just like what you mentioned when you first opened up with this, Daniel, the water being it's like a flat plane of water, and it's just the only indication you get that it's water is those negative space. It's just the white space that's being utilized in the foreground, right on top of that creature and on top of the ocean floor, and then emphasizing it with that cross hatching underneath. It just, what a crazy.
It's so 3D. I mean,
it just to portray that with just black and white, and to figure out a way to do that and do it in a convincing manner is just
that's all brushwork too. Like that's another example. It's the power of that tool specifically when you learn it and apply it to your drawing.
Yeah, brush is the way to go.
Yeah, it really is.
I love the composition, the diagonal composition on this too. The bottom right to top left moves your eye right up across, and her face is like dead center.
It's so powerful, and the expression on the face that he's achieved, it's just, it's unreal.
Really well done.
Yeah,
powerful stuff.
Yeah, down to the kind of movement that there's a directionality to the strokes on all the tentacles that kind of imply or movement. He's consciously not following the contours of the limb. It's the brushwork is all leading up toward the subject of
right.
I see what you're saying. Especially on that far right one.
The far right it's really communicating that kind of movement.
Nice.
Also, the repetition of texture. If you look at the tentacle, the little suctions on the tentacles. I mean, you look at that, and then you look at the coral, the texture in the coral, and the sea life that's on the. I mean, it's echoing the same texture, and then you have the crabs and the crab legs kind of floating around in different areas. It kind of moves your eye across the piece. There's even one in the top right corner that you kind of zoomed in on there. It's just really, there's so much that's so well thought out about this piece that makes it strong, makes it work.
Yeah.
The line weight on the texture on the back part of the squid's like kind of brain head part, like where it's just barely lifted. I don't know if I'm explaining it right.
Yeah,
it almost looks like cracked, like a cracked egg.
Yeah.
Like, God, that's like such a good idea. And it, you put a line on the other side of each one of those indentions, and then it flattens it out. So he's really smart about that.
Yeah. Super nice guy too. Really cool guy.
What kind of what did he publish? Is it mostly comics or magazines or
he mainly his own comic, which there's two he did. Zeozonic Tales, I think that's how you say it, and then the other one was Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. Which was basically like this weird kind of alternate reality where people for some reason have cars. It's kind of like a post-apocalyptic thing, but there's dinosaurs and they have cars, but it's very much of a retro 50s kind of vibe to it. But yeah, he's taking a lot from Wallace Wood, Frank Frazetta inking, and Alex Raymond too. Which Alex Raymond was, he did with Flash Gordon Flash Gordon strip in the 30s.
Okay.
Got a little bit of Hal Foster too. It's Valiant, you know. But
Al Williamson.
Yeah, that too, definitely. So, but again, he takes it, you know, when he does it, it makes you think of those artists, but he still has his own style too, which I think is really cool. You know, but yeah, super powerful stuff, I think. And another thing I like is, you know, I mean, maybe I would be compelled one day to draw like a girl and you know, being confronted by a giant octopus. Probably not, but if you could take those things and apply it to your own work as far as like the choices of line and texture and composition and movement and stuff. That's what I pull from this stuff, you know.
Yeah.
100%.
So.
All right, Mark.
Yeah. So the next one is again a more recent illustrator. I think he's probably in his 40s, if I remember correctly. A Russian fellow named Alex Shadrin. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but he goes by Nether Temple Design, and I found him on Instagram, but I was first introduced to his work when I was my band did a split with another band from California called Cosmic Void Ritual. And I remember picking up, or maybe the dude from the band sent me a shirt. I can't remember if I purchased it or if he sent it to me, but the artwork was really compelling to me. It was just really bizarre and like kind of alien-esque. And it was illustrated by this guy, Nether Temple Design. So again, somebody I don't know, I've never worked with or anything like that, but I find his work to be somewhat reminiscent of like Timo Katola, rest in peace, from Finland. Sort of along those lines of just illustrating just these very, again, kind of like going back to Karmazid, but also artists like Timo.
I didn't know he passed away, Mark.
Yeah, he passed away from leukemia, I believe.
When was that?
It was about three or 4 years ago, I think.
Oh, wow, I had no idea.
Yeah. Just a very much an occult vibe to his work, a sense of mystery that I don't know what it is. I just find it super compelling when I can find these current artists who draw shit that looks like it could have come out of some like ancient text.
Very primitive, yeah.
And that's what his work reminds me of. I've got a couple releases that I've come across in my own collection that he's worked on. Stuff for like, I think Father Befouled, Golgothan Remains, from, I think they're Australian. Some other stuff, I think Horrid Apparition is one, Sick Rights. He also plays in a couple bands himself too. I think he does vocals for like 2 or 3 bands. Which I imagine most of the stuff he tends to kind of work with is like black death metal type bands. So, you know, there's more extreme, kind of noisier, darker kind of bands. But his work is really, really unique, kind of like a woodcut sort of style, but like on steroids. I don't know how to describe it. He does a lot of painting too. His painting style is very similar to like what Karmazid is doing, just like really. It's really unusual, dark, bizarro kind of subject matters that kind of reek of occultism. Really cool stuff, though. I dig his work. I like checking his stuff out on occasion. I find it very. It's not like something I would necessarily do, you know, or it's not like it's not necessarily like a style I would try to repeat or anything like that, but I think that's what I like about it, is because it's so different. You know, it's very different from what I would normally do, and I can appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. Like it would be hard for me to, like, you look at something like that and you think, oh man, that's, you know, it's crude or simple or whatever, but if you were to try to draw, or with me anyway, I would find it difficult to try to let myself. It's almost bold, like those the one on the right, what are those called, stalagmites, or the stuff hanging on? Like I wouldn't approach that way.
Oh hell no, I wouldn't either.
You know what I mean? And it's interesting to look at that and I don't know, reverse engineer it in a way.
there's sort of like a rudimentary aspect to it in a way. I mean, his stuff is pretty complex. It gets pretty complex, and he is a good illustrator. Like a lot of his stuff is really, really well illustrated. These ones are pseudo abstract in a way, I guess.
I like it. I think
I do too.
Yeah,
I like the way that it feels, but I also think, you know, coming from, I mean, you guys could probably relate to this too, like the old school, like underground fanzines. I love stuff that's, I don't want to say shittily drawn, but like stuff that still looks like the artist is a novice and like kind of learning their way. You know,
man, all those demo covers, man.
Yeah,
like
naive style, you mean? Yeah,
naive style. Yeah.
There's just something that about it, and not to say that Alex's work here is like that necessarily, but when I've seen other stuff that's out there, you know, either in fanzines now, more modern fanzines, or even like floating around on Instagram, that's just like, I love that. I love it because I could see an artist is trying to do something, and that means that they're passionate about what they're doing, and even though they're not quite hitting the nail on the head, they're making an attempt, and there's just something about like the character of it that resonates with me.
Yeah, for sure.
So don't get me wrong, like all the work that was being shared today, I mean, I love it because the execution is so well done, but there's also something to be said about like an artist sort of like in their learning stages. I mean, we're all in our learning stages, but I'm talking like early on in their career, you know.
Right.
There's just like a quality to it that's in, I don't know.
Well, a lot of times, you know, passion and energy overrides technicality, you know, or yeah,
it does.
for sure.
Originality too, for sure. Like
Yeah.
obviously one of the most important things.
Yeah.
All right, so for me, a bit of a deviation from like the ink, but you know, just given my trip to Madrid and like Goya's name just everywhere, I saw some of these engravings in person along with the black paintings, and just kind of finding out more about him and like his story. And look, I'm going off of a little bit of Wikipedia and what I read here, but you know, he was around in the late 1700s and then died in like the early, close to mid 1800s. But he lived to be 80 years old, a little over 80, and at that time, that's pretty insane. Yeah. But you know, he started out, you know, through some more traditional means of learning, and then jobs, like not too much different than you guys, you know, doing commissions. But he was doing commissions for portraits for the royal family in Spain. But what eventually happened was he got really tight with, you know, King Philip, either the second or third, and was like doing all these, you know, royal commissions. But you know, France invaded Spain. He lost all of that relationship with what was basically making him money and everything, and he got very disillusioned. He also had a disease, and it went untreated, and he became deaf. So he became pretty bitter, and from that and all that conflict with France and seeing, you know, people dying and getting shot up and stuff, he started making these engravings in these series called Caprichos, Desastres. I'm not going to pronounce that one, and then Disparates. But this is like one of the pieces from, I believe, Desastres. But, you know, they kind of are before the black paintings, and they show that type of style where the faces are very anguished and they're kind of muddled, and, you know, proportion is intentionally kind of out of whack, and it's just very disturbing. And you know, the way I kind of see it, and I'm not an art historian, but a lot of the stuff that before this time was disturbing was depictions of hell and more of stuff that's related to like Christianity and Catholicism, just the antithesis of it. Whereas this, to me, was one of the earlier versions of real life being distorted and being disturbed. You know, but there could be stuff before that. I'm just saying it was a pretty novel idea, I think, at that time, because he was one of the first modernist and one of the last old masters. He was like that bridge. But I just found his stuff incredibly unsettling and holds up over time to feel almost modern in its impact.
Right.
That's my rant.
It's almost like a it feels like an embedded photographer in a war zone or something like that, you know, where you're trying to depict human emotion and terror and fear and, like you said, anguish, because that's what I'm seeing here. This looks like is this an etching? It looks like an etching of sorts. Looks like it has like some aqua tint or something in it to give it a little bit of grayscale. Oh yeah, look at that. Oh.
Yeah, you're right. It has so much of his stuff in his paintings too have that like battlefield photographer. I don't know, kind of call it like it's the framing of it is almost journalistic, but it's these fantastical kind of situations, or the you think of the paintings as at the like the 5th of May or whatever, the painting with like the dude who's like about to get executed, and like the way the lighting, his sense of drama is so acute, but also it's expressed through the subjects and not through like by it being like framed as this like grand scene, or this kind of like dramatic framing, Dutch angles, like things like that. It's like very journalistic in its like depiction, which makes it eerie, which gives this eerie quality,
And this shit came out of left field from doing all these just royal portraits. That's what's kind of cool too. Is like this is like what was brewing in the back of his head while he was just making rich rulers look nice. That's.
I think the black backgrounds too really kind of push the point home. The sky is black in all these images. And I get that's probably part of the printing process, like the etching process. But it adds sort of the sense of darkness to all the pieces.
Yeah. Oppressiveness, yeah.
It's really wild stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool. I saw the stuff at the Prado as well, and like really cool, or at least the black painting series I remember was there, and like again,
the way they lit that room was great.
So cool, yeah. It was really dramatic, and like really, it's like a centerpiece of that museum. We spent like an entire day there. It's really got this weird power. All of his art really is resonates.
One of those black paintings, they weren't. I mean, we don't know, but as far as you can really tell, he just kind of did them for himself. Didn't have any intention of them going anywhere. They were just on his wall, and then he
painted the walls of his house. Yeah. They had to cut them out of the walls.
Yeah, put them on canvas.
Oh, that's amazing.
Oh, it's very disturbing, but very cool.
Damn.
All right, well, let's bring it home with a favorite of all of ours.
Woo! Oh man,
Miller.
Yeah,
that's the king. That's the king, man.
Yeah, this guy, Drouillet.
Yeah, I had to pick, and I almost honestly Drouillet would have been if there was a third, probably would have been Drouillet because I mean, I love. He's got such a obviously the way that he renders shit with his fine detail and his texture, and kind of the twisted branches and like even like the one on the left where it's such a great contrast of the like etched kind of rock face and then the twisted tree, and it's like all these great textures and values and shit, but like the thing that's the coolest even beyond all of his awesome rendering and all of his cool shit is just how crazy fucking inventive he is. How
I was just gonna say it's otherworldly. I mean, it's so original. Yeah. So original.
Yeah, it's just the faces, the like how it's like fucking psychedelic. Just the way that faces are constantly being worked into, shields and helmets, and they're all like kind of coming out of every surface. There's these weird faces and amorphous sort of like monstrous shapes that are kind of constantly being born. It's this. I mean, he did all that work for Games Workshop for Chaos shit, which I think the middle one is like a Games Workshop piece, and it's like it's fucking perfect. Like it's all perfect for that. For that setting, which is that kind of cosmic horror. But then also he did so much stuff for Tolkien, and the orcs and the Orcai and all the really just great character personality to I have a little book that has a bunch of his artwork for Tolkien in it, and it's just his
weapon and armor design, man, it's just so
it's all imbued with his unique personality, that his unique style. Like they all he takes everything and twists it to be part of this this crazy.
And all this stuff was drawn with rapidograph, by the way.
Yeah.
It's I think that's kind of what we all strive for in a way, is this sort of world building that we do. We have our own approach. And Ian clearly has his own, but he's also been able to impress that upon other brands, the brands that he's worked with over time. And it's cool now to even see at his age, his work being, licensed and whatnot for
Magic the Gathering and stuff. Yeah, and also and for bands.
Yeah, it's just incredible. Just absolutely just insanely good.
The mounted figure, on the horse on the right, where he places those solid blacks, is just, oh man,
yeah,
it's beautiful.
That one, it reminds me of the there's a Durer print.
Yes,
that I want to say it had to be intentional, because the framing is so deliberately similar, but it's like this fucking mirror chaos universe version of that, which I love Durer too, but this is
I know it is his own version of it. I love it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have looked, but I mean, for his prestige and level, his originals are pretty affordable.
Oh yeah,
I'm trying to save up to buy one.
I want to get one too. Yeah.
Once he dies, they're gonna triple.
Yeah,
I know.
So trying to catch that moment.
Hopefully, we got a lot more of his art left. Yeah, I mean, I fucking love his shit, man. And honestly, Miller. I didn't even discover until somewhat recently, within I don't know, the last 5 to 10 years, where I maybe had seen his work in a couple places, but. Lovecraft book covers. He did a bunch of paperback book covers and stuff. So where it was kind of familiar, and then I finally was wait a minute, okay, who is this? Who is this guy? What's his name? And that was only until fairly recently. And this is in terms of talk about inspiration. This is one of the guys who I frequently come to when I'm just I don't I'm tired of talking about Daniel talking about his weaponry and shields and stuff. I'm tired of drawing shields the same way, and then you just come in oh, okay, well that's definitely a way to do a shield, and then you take that and you dial it back a little bit. I'm okay, maybe I'm not gonna go fully Miller on it, but it's it's boundlessly inspiring.
Oh man,
always inspiring.
It's the best.
What's that Tolkien book you have? Because I try to collect pretty much all his.
Well, it's a small one because there was a series of it's the one that I have is the dark powers of Tolkien or something, and there was a series of books, and they're all affordable. They're kind of little books. I found them at Powell's Books here in Portland, and it has a bunch of art in it, and it's kind of just this kind of sort of vague timeline and glossary of Tolkien stuff, but the cool part was that it was $7.99, and it was has all these great full color illustrations, and it's not a big volume. It's pretty small, but it's still worth checking out. And I've seen it other places too. I think I did a series of them, and he did so much, and I don't even know what it was for, but he has done so much Tolkien art that was obviously commissioned for various things, or I don't know if there was an illustrated. I don't know if the Tolkien estate commissioned him to do I don't know if there was an edition of the Lord of the Rings trilogy that had illustrated plates to go with it, and they had him do 60 of them, or I have no idea because there's
I can't remember the name of it, but there was a book specifically with Lord of the Rings art that he did. I can't remember the name of it, but
I'm sure you can collect it in a few places.
I'm gonna look up that EC Comics. Was it IOW series?
IDW. I think.
IDW.
I misread that. I'm gonna look at it up that.
Yeah, I mean,
which, by the way, his work is perfect for that world. I mean, Tolkien.
Yeah.
Yeah, so cool.
Good stuff.
Yeah, it's great to see like his art also, like, you know, Mark was saying, pop up in you know, bands licensing it for album covers, or you know, he I think recently did a couple pieces for a Magic the Gathering set, and for Althar, that Althar album, but for Magic the Gathering did a couple, and like they popped up and was like, oh fuck yeah, like that was definitely one of those, like, oh, they grabbed this established dude for some new art. See Ian Miller's art pop up in fun and unexpected places sometimes, which is great. You know, he's still out there. He's still doing it.
If you have the original pressing of Realms of Chaos Bolt Thrower LP, it came with a large booklet. Inside is a ton of Ian Miller pieces. Like,
old Warhammer stuff too.
Yeah. I love all that Warhammer stuff too. That Warhammer art in general is so great, but his is like, I mean, there's so many great artists, Adrian Smith, and I don't know, just such a variety.
Tony Ackland.
Yeah. So many great artists that have worked in that, and like his is like the best.
Lee recently acquired the first Realm of Chaos.
Yeah, man. Without realizing, you twist my arm.
Those are my Bibles. Those two.
Yeah.
Those are my Bibles.
Yeah. Well, a lot of love went into that, making that book.
Oh man, they're so good. So good.
Oh, well, that was a blast, guys.
Yeah, that was awesome. Got to learn about a lot of artists.
It's great hanging out. Yeah. Nice meeting you, Brad.
Good meeting you guys.
Yeah. Meet you, Brad.
We're finally being face to face with Mark Riddick. Yeah.
It's awesome. Well, it's funny because I watch all you guys on Lee's channel too, so it's cool to, like, you know, just to hang out and
absolutely
face, you know.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lee.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad you guys carved some time. But yeah, for everybody watching, hope you guys found this as enlightening as I did. Of course, new episodes every other week, if not even more frequently than that. But yeah, you guys
pick up a brush and a pen.
Yeah, pick up a brush and a pen.
Do it.
And get drawn. All right, over and out.
See you guys.
Kumbaya.
Everybody.